I was just thinking about something, but it's going to be maybe a long story with so many questions. Should I tell it anyway? Why not? Because I was joking a little bit about nursery rhymes, right? And when Ajahn Brahm lived in Thailand, okay, I'll tell it quickly. When Ajahn Brahm lived in Thailand, at some point the food there was really, really bad. And maybe just rice, and if he was lucky, he got rice with a boiled frog. And that's all he got to eat. At least that's the way he tells it. I'm not sure if it was actually that bad, but I believe that at least at some days he had boiled frog, right? And one day a lady came to the monastery and offered a lamb stew. Just a stew made of lamb. I wouldn't have eaten it, but Ajahn Brahm, I think, did. And when we were sitting upstairs, the lady was called Mary, and he said to the monks, well, probably just popped into his head and said, Mary had a little lamb, then turned it into stew. And then he said, I don't know how it continues further. And then I said, Mary had a little lamb, then turned it into stew. Ajahn said, I'm really tempted, but boiled frog will do. And then he said, that's funny, but not true. Oh. Apparently some people have not figured out yet that for every room there is a fan in the cottage, somewhere in one of the stores. Yeah. So it can be a bit hot. Yeah, here in Australia during this time of year. So use your fan if you need some cool air. Well, maybe at some point, I don't know. It might be a power line issue, but maybe they should look into putting some air conditioning in the rooms as well. I don't know if possible. But maybe you can be content with just a fan, right? Why not? Be content with the small things. You don't have to always have the best of the best, right? It's like, who remembers or who knows the philosopher Diogenes? Heard of it? Yeah, so Diogenes was a cynic philosopher in ancient Greek, and he lived very simply. He just lived on the street and slept in a barrel. He was like a dog. And that's what he was living like. In the suttas, we also have this thing called a dog duty ascetic, and those are like the cynics of ancient Greece. They do the same thing. And there's this story, it's probably not true, but it's a nice story, that Diogenes was just lying on the street, and then Alexander the Great came up to him. And Alexander the Great, at that point, the biggest emperor the world had ever seen, he could afford anything he wanted. And he said, Diogenes, Diogenes, if there's anything you want, I can give it to you, just tell me. And then Diogenes says, just get out of my sunlight. And then Alexander the Great reportedly said, if I wasn't Alexander the Great, I would want to be Diogenes, to be so content. And then Diogenes says, if I wasn't Diogenes, I would also want to be Diogenes. So how about you? If you weren't you, would you still want to be you? Yeah? If I wasn't Sunyo, I still want to be Sunyo. It's good enough, right? If you weren't Burr, you still want to be Burr. Burr is excellent. She just came to visit for today. We have this retreat to thank to Burr, actually. She asked me to give it. So I'm not sure if that is a blessing or a curse for you, but I consider it a blessing anyway to teach you.
Do you enjoy his retreat? Yes. Excellent. So I book you next year already, okay? Deal.
See, I don't have any say in the matter. Okay, here we go. Dear Venerable, how, where or when can I apply opening the door of my heart to stop the chatter in my mind? Sorry if my question isn't clear, but I'm a bit confused. With metta. So opening the door of your heart is a story by Ajahn Brahm, and it's to open the door of your heart to whatever happens. Yeah? His story got from when his father once took him aside. Right? His father passed away pretty young, but when his father was still alive, he took Ajahn Brahm aside and told him, "My son, whatever you do, the door of my house is always open to you." By which the father meant like unconditioned forgiveness. Yeah? And my father once did something very similar to me. He said, "Whatever you do, you can always come back to this house." Yeah? And Ajahn Brahm turned that into a story, like opening not the door of your house for anything, but opening the door of your heart towards any situation. Now, how can you apply this to stop the chatter in your mind? I sort of answered that this morning, especially if the chatter comes from a place of ill will, of annoyance, then you can still that chatter down a bit. Yeah, if you think, this retreat is not good enough, this room is too small, this is too hot, this is too cold, it can be ill will. And just, I open the door of my heart to this situation. And also to these thoughts, because usually the situation is one thing, but the thoughts, that's what we get annoyed with most of all. Stupid Sunyo, stupid thoughts, get out, you don't belong. Yeah? Angry demon. Harry the demon. Are you all right there, Harry? Last time we didn't have Harry, but what's his name again? Gusto. I think he's over there somewhere. Gusto the gorilla. Because Ajahn Brahm's retreats have a different schedule, and when you look at his schedule, then I maybe 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, it says, "Rise with gusto," yeah, which means rise with energy. But at some point, a person put a question in the box, "Who is Gusto?" So, there he is. You've got Gusto over there, yeah? So then we said, this is Gusto. And, Arthur, maybe tomorrow you can rise with Gusto. Just take him to bed with you. Yeah. Yeah, so to stop the chatter in the mind, there's multiple ways. I explained that yesterday, this morning. This morning, actually, I did. And kindness should always be underneath that. Yeah? If these methods that I mentioned this morning to still the thoughts, I won't mention them again, it doesn't really matter, but whatever method you use to still the thoughts, it should always come from a place of kindness, first of all. Otherwise it'll never work. So that's how you can use opening the door of your heart to still the thoughts. Dear Venerable, how can I tell if I'm neglecting or blind to coarser defilements and focusing instead on things further down the path? And how do I figure out what earlier practice I've neglected? This is in relation to the Panchudovaka Sutta. Okay, I can't remember that sutta off the top of my head, so I'll just answer the question as it is at the top. So how can you know if you're neglecting coarser defilements, instead focusing further down the path? Well, the question should maybe be the other way around. How do you know when you're neglecting the smaller defilements? Because the coarser defilements usually quite obvious, yeah, when you really get angry with a person, when you really have lots of desire, restlessness, these things, when they are there, are usually quite obvious, unless you're all asleep, yeah. So it's more like the subtle defilements that are so hard to see. These defilements that just stand in the way of completely letting go and entering the really deep meditations. And how do you know whether they are still present or not? Well, one way is to know if you don't attain these deep meditations, then those defilements are still to some level present. But the thing with defilements is, especially the subtler ones, they can be hard to see because you don't know what they are. And some people can get stuck in wrong views because they don't know what right view is. And the story that is relatable to this is the story of the tadpole. A tadpole, is like a baby frog, and the tadpole grows up in the water, crawls out of its egg, and swims around in the water for a long time, and grows up there, and at some point, the tadpole grows feet. Now the idea is, while the tadpole is immersed in the water, with water all around it, it can never really know what water truly is, because you need to step outside of the water and look down at the water and compare it to the fresh air to know what water truly is. This standard saying is like a fish can't know what water is. But the reason we use a tadpole as an example is the tadpole grows legs and one day goes onto land and becomes a frog. And when it's a frog, looks down at the water, then it understands what water truly is. And it's the same with the defilements. It's only when you abandon them and you look back, then you understand what you were immersed in for your entire life. This so-called water of the defilements that you've been swimming around in all the time, especially the sense of self. It can be very, very subtle, much more subtle than you might think. It's not just about ego and pride. It's about any sort of identification with anything whatsoever. And when you let go of that, and afterwards you look back, when you let go of this is when you enter one of the jhanas. When you look back on that, then you understand what the defilements truly are. I want to tell the story, my favorite fairy tale of all time. Is this going to be like the first day when I answer only 2 questions? We'll see. My thinking is that these stories answer many of the questions that are still to come in the box. That's what I hope anyway. My favorite fairy tale of all time is one from the Brothers Grimm. Yeah, the Brothers Grimm wrote many of the famous fairy tales, like Little Red Riding Hood, the 3 Little Pigs, and so forth. They probably just collected these from Germany. Anyway, this is a less famous fairy tale, and I think they should one day make a Disney movie out of it. Yeah? And then I might even watch it. This is the story of Happy Hans. Happy Hans was working for his boss for many, many years, was working very, very hard at his job. One day, Hans, at this point he wasn't yet Happy Hans, he was just Hans. I don't know his last name, he was just Hans in the story. And Hans, he wanted to visit his mother, because he just wanted to see his mother again. And he went up to his boss and said, "Boss, I want to visit my mother. Please pay me my wages for all those 7 years that I've been working for you so very, very hard." And the boss said, "Hans, you've been an excellent employee. Yeah, even been employee of the month a couple times. So here for you is a lump of gold." And the lump of gold was this big. And Hans was, "Wow, this is good, a lump of gold." So Hans set out on his travels towards his mother, who lived very, very far away. And Hans was walking for a number of days. But this lump of gold got really, really heavy. And Hans thought, what good is a lump of gold? I don't need a lump of gold. So he went into the village and he saw somebody with a horse. And he said, can I buy that horse from you? Because this lump of gold is heavy. I've been carrying it around all the time and it's no good for me at all. Okay, said the man. He was very happy. A horse cost much less than this much gold. So Hans gave the gold and got the horse and went on his travels. He thought, oh, I can even ride on this horse. It might make my travels a bit more quick, and I'll be at my mother sooner. So next day, Hans, hop on the horse. But it turned out that it was a wild horse. And the horse threw Hans off. And it almost ran away, but Hans quickly grabbed the reins and was pulled by the horse all over the street. Boom, 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 boom. That's a scene I would like to see in the Disney movie. And all pulled all over the place and no control at all over this wild horse. Ah, thought Hans, this horse is no good. I don't need that. It's only a problem. Just like the lump of gold, it's only problems. Next day, Hans came into town and saw somebody walking with a cow. And Hans thought, a horse is only problems. Maybe a cow is better. So he went up to the man and said, can I change this horse for a cow? Because from the cow, I might get some milk to sustain me on my travels. And it's better than a horse that just drags me around. Sure, said the man. Because a horse is much more expensive than a cow. So he was happy to change that. And next day, Hans walking with the cow and wanted to milk the cow. But it turned out that the cow was dry. And the cow was also really slow. And Hans had to drag it behind him all the time. Drag her behind him all the time. Yerk, yerk, yerk. Come along, cow, come along. The cow was slow. Just held Hans back. And then Hans thought, a cow is only problems. Nothing good. So, next day he came into a village. I'm sorry, this goes on and on for quite a while. I can't change this story, come on. So he came into a village and somebody was selling a pig. And Hans thought, okay, well, a pig is better than this cow which is dry. Maybe the pig I can turn into some bacon, because Hans was not a Buddhist, so that's why. And he thought, I can make some bacon, kill this pig and get some bacon out of it. Yeah? And Hans took the pig under his arm and went walking into the next village. And then, before he came to that village, somebody showed up to him and said, oh, have you got that pig? Somebody in this village stole the pig, and now the cops are looking all over the place for somebody with that pig. Thought Hans, a pig is only problems, no good at all. And he said to the man, can I change it for something? And the man said, I can change it for a goose. Yeah, the wah wah, those. So, thought Hans, this pig is no good. Yeah, let's change it for a goose. Maybe the goose, I can pluck its feathers, because he was still not a Buddhist, and turn it into a pillow. So Hans took the goose and went walking. But the goose was just always fluttering about, and Hans couldn't hold it. It almost flew away, and only problems, and smack him in the face with his wings and beak. Bah, bah, bah. Hans thought, a goose is only problems, nothing good. Then Hans went into the next village, and there he came and saw a man with a grindstone, grinding scissors, like they used to do in the past. Nowadays we just buy new scissors when they got dull, but in the past they used to sharpen them. And also knives. And Hans thought, oh, if I get a grinding stone like that, then I can grind scissors and make some money, and then with that money I can support my travels to my mother, and maybe I can buy some milk and buy some bacon. That sounds like a good idea. So he went up to the man and said, do you have a stone like that for me? So I can also grind scissors for a living. Sure, said the man, I'll be right back. Of course, Hans said, I'll change it for this goose, right? You guessed that already. Sure, said the man, I'll be right back. So the man actually just went into the forest and took a random rock from the forest. And the rock was this big. And he gave the rock to Hans. And Hans thought, okay, now I can make some money with this grindstone. And Hans went on his travels again. And then once he got to a well, and he put the rock down on the rim of the well, and then bent forward to get some water with his cup. And what did he do? He hit accidentally the rock, and bloop! It went all down the well. And then Hans thought, now I have nothing, and now I can be at peace. First I had a big golden lump, which was only problems, only heavy. Then I had a horse, which always pulled me forward, which was only problems. Then a cow, which I had to drag around, which is only problems. Then a pig, which would have gotten me killed if the cops found me, because this was in the medieval times, right? So they would have killed Hans for stealing the pig. Only problems. Then a goose, which was always fluttering about. Only problems. Then a stone, which was so heavy to carry. Only problems. But when I lost the stone, I just let go. Now I'm happy. So then Hans traveled onwards to his mother and was happy there. That was the story of happy Hans. So to have nothing, that is the highest happiness. As the Buddha also said, having nothing and getting nothing. That is the highest happiness, or that is liberation. Now, I can fill in some of the details of this story. The lump of gold stands for all your possessions. Your car, your house, your bank account. It's only problems. And you left that behind and came here. The horse that keeps pulling you ahead is your future. It's only problems. The cow that you keep dragging behind you, that is, of course, your past. It's only problems, only a burden. When you go deeper in meditation, you let go of the past and the future. Arrive here, then you realize the past and the future are burdens. The pig stands for your body. It will get you killed one day, and it's only problems. Yeah, well, having a body, you'll die one day. That's what that means. Yeah, if you let meditation, you can let go of your body. You realize, this is only problems. The wild goose that's always fluttering about stands for the defilements in your mind, your restlessness, your craving, your ill will. It's only problems. When those settle, you become more peaceful. And you become more happy, like Hans. The last thing, the heavy stone that you've been carrying around all your life, actually, is the sense of self. If you let go of the sense of self, it's like bloop, throwing a stone into the well, and you realize, like happy Hans, I never needed that stone in the first place. It was only problems. This is when you enter the jhanas, when there is no sense of self, no hindrances, and the jhanas is like coming home to your mother. And that is how you know whether you have abandoned the defilements or not. Now, Hans didn't live forever with his mother. At some point, Hans got bored of his mother. Then he thought, mother is only problems. And even the jhanas, they're only problems. The enlightened ones are not attached even to the jhanas, because they too are impermanent and cannot give you ultimate happiness. And to realize that is the highest aim. But to do that, you still first have to go through these experiences. It's not like you can let them go without going there. Okay, so that's 2 questions answered in half an hour. I keep making a joke of this being slow, but at some point it's no longer a joke. It becomes a real problem. No. Dear Venerable, the Buddha's simile on the stream that flows up ending in the ocean, is it applicable for the stream winners only, or it include all others who practice the path diligently? Well, I don't want to, shall I say it? I don't want to really disappoint anybody, but it's only the stream winners who practice the path. Really, truly. The Noble Eightfold Path is called that way because it's the path of the noble ones. And it starts with right view. However, if you're not a noble one, then you can still practice many of those factors of the path, of course. So you can still do right mindfulness and right samadhi, but it's only noble right mindfulness when it's practiced by a noble one. But yeah, it's actually only the stream that ends up in the ocean is true for stream winners. The Buddha said, all other people just walk back and forth on the shore. Yeah, they just never enter the stream. They just back and forth in the shore, life after life after life. However, you are here, you're in the right place. The Dhamma here taught by Ajahn Brahm is good. So don't worry, you keep practicing. One day you will fall into the stream. And then you will be taken to the ocean, all by itself. What dress code did the Buddha actually lay down for female and male bhikkhus? Female or bhikkhus are actually bhikkhunis, is what we call them. Yeah, that's just the name for the nuns there in Pali. As if, if I would have to wear what the nuns are wearing, I'd die of heat stroke in these hot days. This is cruelty and not compassion. Yeah, the nuns, I think the nuns are wearing a jacket usually. Well, they're even using blankets, so I don't think they are very suffering from heat stroke. Yeah. It's also when we have a talk in Jhana monastery, all the monks are complaining, oh, it's so hot in here, and all the nuns are sitting with their beanies on. Women are generally a bit colder-blooded, I believe, but I don't want to brush off the question like that because it's an important question. I think there should be as much equality between the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis as we possibly can. Yeah? Ideally 100%, and I've always been a big supporter of that. And not just in words, but also in some small deeds that I can do. Yeah, I'm just one tiny new monk. But in Bodhinyana monastery, it used to be the case that when the bhikkhunis came over and for the meal, then first all the monks would go, and afterwards all the bhikkhunis. Yeah? May have been before some of you ordained, but that was the case. Doesn't matter how many years as a bhikkhuni they had. If a monk had 1 reign, 1 year, is that what that means? Then they would go before a bhikkhuni who made 20 reigns. Yeah? Now here when we have food, I go first because I am a monk for longer than the venerables, but if they were more reigns than me, I would let them go first. Because that just makes sense, yeah, right? And so once I brought that up as well with Ajahn Brahm, and Ajahn Brahm was already thinking about it and other people in the Sangha as well, but I thought, we need to do some action. So I went to Ajahn Brahm and said, can't we just mix it in the line when we go on food for alms round in the monastery and go by the amount of reigns? Yeah, if a bhikkhuni has 6 reigns, they go after the monk who has 7 reigns and before the monk who has 5. And there was a little bit of discussion in the Sangha, but now that's how we do it. And that feels much better. So I do support that. But there is a different dress code, I believe, for the bhikkhunis than for the monks. But maybe, Venerables, you know more about that, do you? Than me? Would you like to explain, or? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So what Venerable is saying, Venerable Janti, is that there is a different dress code. The bhikkhunis have to wear something more on the top, right, than the bhikkhunis. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's why they are wearing the jackets all the time. But I have heard from another bhikkhuni that in the time of the Buddha, it was probably maybe not a jacket. It's up to, that's why I asked the bhikkhunis, because I let the bhikkhunis decide upon their own rules. But I have heard from another bhikkhuni, I myself don't have an opinion one way or the other, but that might not have been a jacket, but more just like some covering for the chest, and that they would also be bare shoulder as well.
It's about modesty.
Yeah. But do you get heat stroke?
I wear a t-shirt underneath.
Even wearing a t-shirt underneath. Yeah.
Working for something. It's just managing people's perceptions. You just get used to it.
Okay.
And this is for modesty too, not for all.
Oh, okay. All right. So the Venerables don't seem to mind, at least Venerable Janti. But I've seen bhikkhunis with uncovered shoulder as well. So in America, yeah. You know what I'm talking. Yeah. And I think she makes a good point. That's probably, yeah. So I would support that. But I also support you as well. And let that up to the bhikkhunis to decide. Dear Venerable Sunyo, during the meditation this afternoon, you suggested several ways to quiet the mind and to become more present. None of these helped me because my mind was neutral and it seemed like I was trying to get somewhere, i.e., to be more present. Could you say more about neutral mind versus present mind? Is there anywhere to go or anything to do if my mind is neutral? Thank you. Okay, yeah, as I said, this is very difficult to do guided meditations because everybody's mind is different and sometimes certain reflections are applicable, sometimes not. And if your mind is already neutral and not thinking so much, and then you try to get somewhere, then you disturb it. So if your mind is neutral and already present, just stay with that. Actually, it was the same for me. I gave you these when I was sitting here meditating with you, I gave you these instructions about stilling the thoughts. And then I said, after I stopped speaking, no thoughts for me. So nothing to do. So I just spent sitting there in equanimity. Dear Bhante, I was lost in samsara, but after being left on top of the stupa, so close to the Buddha's enlightenment, I have entered the stream. With love from the little white bunny. Ah. So now maybe we should all sit on top of the stupa. See if it helps. Yeah, okay. I don't mind a little bit of playfulness. Actually, I was talking to one of the interviewees and I said, I'm kind of happy that people climb on top of the stupa and put bunnies on there, because it means they know that I'm not gonna be very strict here, you know. We can be quite loose here. And I want to have that loose attitude, playfulness and happiness. Yeah. Some meditation retreats you might always feel tense, because even if you don't show up for a single session, they come to your room and come get you. Yeah? Has anybody come to your room during this retreat to come get you? No. And that's on purpose, because we want to create this attitude of kindness, acceptance. You're good enough as you are, because that's the attitude you want to create in your meditation. So yeah, if you put a bunny on the stupa, I can understand. I don't really mind, to be honest, but I explained why, better not. How do the 5 hindrances fuel delusion? So I think this person is quite well read in the suttas, because there is one sutta where the Buddha says that delusion is fueled or dependent on the 5 hindrances. Delusion is this like underlying defilement that basically mainly the sense of self, and also not seeing what suffering and impermanence really are. That's delusion, or basically not knowing the Four Noble Truths. And how does not knowing truly, deeply, like an arahant, an enlightened being, how does not knowing these 4 Noble Truths, how does that depend upon the 5 hindrances? Well, the idea here is that you need to abandon the 5 hindrances before you can understand the Four Noble Truths. You need to attain these deep meditative states where you abandon all these hindrances, including the sense of self, which underlies these hindrances. And then you'll be able to let go of delusion one day. So that's how the 5 hindrances fuel delusion. It's more like a teaching tool. The Buddha is saying basically, if you want to abandon delusion, you need to abandon the 5 hindrances first. You need to attain samadhi, and then, like the little tadpole that grows its legs and gets out of the water, if you get out of the water of the hindrances and the defilements, then you look at the water. You understand what the water really is, what the suffering really is. And then you understand the Four Noble Truths. How would you convince a child of, say, 5-year-old and a young teenager the benefits of keeping the 5 precepts and practicing kindfulness? Well, this is also a story of having no expectations. I was once staying in a Cambodian temple near Perth, near Armadale actually. And some of you know where that is because they've been there. And I was staying there, and I'm laughing at myself because this was just such a telltale event of not preparing for the future. So I was staying there, and a mother came in with her 2 young children. Yeah? And I think they were about maybe 5 and 7 or something. And they had on a Batman suit, both of them, yeah? Including the ears and the Batman logo, yeah? And all in black. And I thought, oh yeah, these kids are into Batman. But didn't think much of it until the mother asked, oh, can you talk to my children and teach them some Buddhism? And I was like, yeah, sure. But I have my lunch first. So after lunch, I'll talk to them. So while sitting my lunch, I'm like, oh, I have rarely ever taught children before. So what am I going to do? So during my lunch, just thinking, oh, yeah, okay, they're into Batman, so maybe I'll tell a story of how Batman is like the superhero. It's like the Buddha, you know. Batman fighting the crime, and the crime is people stealing, killing, and doing all the wrong things. Yeah, that's what I'll tell. And then say, if you want to be like Batman, you cannot kill, you cannot steal, you cannot lie, and I'll do all those bad things that the Joker does, yeah? You're not the Joker. So I had this whole story prepared, right? I told you before, you prepare a whole conversation. Okay, well, I had this whole story prepared, I had my lunch, and I thought, okay, these kids, let them come. I'll teach them some Dhamma. I'm ready. So they came up to me, And they sat down and I said, do you like Batman? And they said, no, we like Pokemon. My whole story out of the window. Right there. I can't say, oh yeah, be like Batman if they don't like Batman. Yeah, so then we just talked about Pokemon. And no Dhamma at all, actually. Just talk about what their favorite Pokemon was and so forth. And yeah, so, but maybe that's the way you can teach your children about Dhamma. I think there's not really a general way to do it. You just find something that engages your children and sort of integrate it. You can use some of these stories maybe, by like Happy Hans and the Angry Demon, and what else have we had? The oak tree, and so forth. These kind of things. Time for another story then. Another fairy tale. There was once a king who had a beautiful white horse, a beautiful white stallion. This was the best horse in the whole country, and it was always squeaky clean and always really, really beautiful. This horse was washed every day by the stable hands. And one day this horse was led to the pool where they washed the horses. And this horse went up to the pool and it smelled the pool. And it looked at the pool and it saw that the pool was dirty and was used by another horse before. And if he would go in there, he would become dirty as well. So the horse refused to go in. No matter how hard the stable hands pulled on his reins, the horse just stood there, firm, determined to not go into the water. When the king heard that the horse was not willing to take its bath, was unaware of the dirty pool, and he just asked one of his wise ministers, go find out why this horse is not wanting to take a bath. He always took a bath before. Yeah, something wrong? Is he sick maybe? Is he not well? Or has he lost his mind? So the minister was wise and went up to the horse and the pool and the stable hands and looked at the horse. And he saw the horse indeed hadn't taken his bath, was still completely dry. But he also saw that the horse was smelling the air. And then the minister himself smelled the air and smelled the pool. Oh yeah, this pool is stinky. It's filthy. It's been used by another horse before, a very filthy horse actually, I should add to the story. Yeah, one of the farmer's horses who plowed the field all day. And a very dirty horse who never took a bath in a whole year. And then the minister thought, this is a wise horse. He doesn't want to take a bath because he'll become more dirty in that water of that dirty horse. Went back to the king and told him the story. And then the king thought, my horse is a wise horse. And my white stallion knows how not to get dirty. And this is a simile for when you have to deal with stinky people, with difficult people who never clean their minds for a whole year. Yeah? And who leave this dirty smell around everywhere. Do you dive into their dirtiness? Or do you have principles? And are you firm? Say, no, I will not meddle with that. I will stay clean and will not get stained by those people. So this is a story of how to stay away from difficult people, or at least their energies, you know. It's stinky energy that some people have around them. See if you can have principles and say, no, I will not let myself be dirtied by that. Use these kind of stories for your children. Yeah? There's lots of moral stories in the world. And, sometimes I just look one or two up, yeah? And then I use them here. Dear Venerable, can non-Buddhists follow a different path or religion to become enlightened? Many people in the world have probably not heard of Buddhism. Thank you. The Lord Buddha was once asked this very similar question in one of the texts, and then he said, wherever the Noble Eightfold Path is practiced, wherever there is right view, right speech, right thought, I'm mixing up the order, right livelihood, right action, right effort, right mindfulness, and right stillness or right unification of the mind, right samadhi. There, wherever that path is practiced, there you will find enlightened people. So if other people in the world practice the Noble Eightfold Path, then they will become enlightened. This is a picture of me. It's not a question, but it says, the thoughts are self-arising. And nature is nowness knowing. Just be aware, that's all. And then it has a thought bubble that, I think this is me anyway, it says Bhikkhu Sunyo, a thought bubble, that I'm thinking this. But I'm only saying it. Not thinking that all the time. But yeah, maybe I give you the idea that thoughts are self-arising. And I also said that's one way to look at it, right? Because when we identify too much with our thoughts, then we have this sense of self. Things are, these are my thoughts. And I am responsible, and you feel bad if you have bad thoughts, and you feel good if you have good thoughts, and it's all ego, sense of self. So I said there's no entity below the thoughts, by which I meant there's no self or mind, eternal mind kind of thing below the thoughts. The thoughts sort of arise and they cease, and you can just let them go. So that's what I meant. So thank you for that picture. But another way to look at it is, as I explained, that there is always some intention behind a thought. They don't come completely out of nowhere. Sadhu English? I think the person still wants us to say awesome, awesome, or something like that. But you know, there's people from all different countries here. I'm Dutch, so we can also, if I can insist that we do it in Dutch. Uitstekend, uitstekend, uitstekend. Everybody together? I know there's a few people who speak Dutch here, one or two others. But no, yeah, let's just do it in Pali. That's the language of the Buddha. We all know what it means. Now it's been on the board. That was so nice. Catherine put the translation of sadhu in, I think, 10 or 15 different languages. And if yours was not in there, then just let us know. How to still that underlying force? I don't get how that is the run, walking, sit, etc. Please elaborate. Okay, maybe you don't get the connection between the simile that I talked about this morning of the man who was running and then decided to walk instead, then decided to sit, and then decided to lie down. So I didn't explain that simile very properly, perhaps, for which I apologize. And it also took me a little bit to understand that simile myself. So, the underlying force below the thoughts, actually I just mentioned that, right? And there's always some instigation below the thoughts. They don't come without a cause. So, that underlying force is some sense of will, some kind of intention. There's always some intention that arises first, and then the thoughts come afterwards. So the idea is, if you can see that process happening, then you can sort of cut the tree at the root. You can cut that intention. If you see that is an unwholesome intention, and you counter that. And the simile is that the man is running, and then he thinks to himself, why am I running? And I think the idea is that he realizes, oh, there's no need to be running right now. Yeah? It's just like you look at your intentions and you realize, oh, there's no need for these intentions. Maybe they're even bad intentions. Or unwholesome intentions, I should say. Yeah? So the man realizes, I'm running for no reason. When he actually thought of the reasons for the running, same, if you think about the reasons for your thinking, you might realize, oh, there's no good reasons to think. So why don't I just stop these thoughts? Think maybe some more subtle thoughts. That is just like the man who was running and then decided, oh, I might as well just walk. Dear Venerable, in the quill protection chant, the baby quill calls to mind the virtues of past Buddhas and made a firm assertion, determination, I think something like that is what you mean, that by the power of truth may the fire recede. I don't quite understand what the power of truth means. Can you please explain? Thank you. Okay, so for those unfamiliar, this is a story from the Jatakas, which is probably some later texts, yeah, that are not spoken by the Buddha himself, but sort of, if you have children and you want to teach these kind of fairy tales, the Jatakas have many of these kind of fairy tales in them. And they probably existed in India at the time. Yeah, you had this whole oral tradition, because people didn't have books, so they told lots of stories. They didn't have television, so lots of stories going around, people sharing. And these stories, at some point, the Buddhists started making them into stories about the Buddha's past life. Yeah? Some people take them literally. I personally don't. But they're still beautiful stories. And this one is about a quill, which is a kind of bird, a small bird. And a quill once was abandoned by his mother and father before he even had the opportunity to learn how to fly. And what was more, his feet got cut off. I can't remember why. And his wings were also cut off. And then the quill was lying there on the floor, all helpless. And then the fire came in the forest, encroaching upon the quill. And then the quill is supposed to have chanted some verses about the Buddha and his virtues that you say here. And by the power of this truth, may the fire recede, and it did. And I said I think it's a bit of a fairy tale, but we still chant that. So that's during the fire time here in the monastery. We chanted every Wednesday the same verses from the Jatakas as like a fire protection. I'm not sure if it actually literally works, or I mean truly works, but at least it reminds us that it's fire time, so we are more on the lookout. So at least it helps in that regard. But I don't think the power of truth can make a fire turn around. Yeah. But that is not the point. It's more like recollecting the virtues of the Buddha, and that there is something really beautiful in that even if the monastery would burn down, we still have these truths. Yeah? So that is more important than the monastery. It's more important than Jhana Grove is what you take away from Jhana Grove. What have you found new in your heart? And also, what have you let go? And how are you now as a person? By the power of these truths, you can find peace. Okay. I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening to some of these stories. And yeah, I think we'll get through them all. So, shall we do uitstekend, or... Let's try. Uitstekend. See? It's not the same. So, here we go, and give it all you've got. Yeah? Story. Story or no story? Story. Okay. There was a man who came all the way from France to visit Ajahn Chah a long time ago. And that man was very busy, but he heard that Ajahn Chah was a very famous monk with lots of wise advice for life. So he wanted to speak to Ajahn Chah. And this is not a fairy tale, this is an actual story, an actual event. And he went to Ajahn Chah's monastery, Wat Papong. And when he came there and went to Ajahn Chah's hut, where Ajahn Chah received the guests in the afternoon. And the man walked up and saw there were like 100 of people sitting around Ajahn Chah asking all sorts of questions. And the man only had one day in Thailand, or at least in that place. And he thought, I'll never get to ask my question. So the man just grabbed the broom from the rack, started sweeping the leaves. I swept some leaves in Wat Papong and it's endless. There's so many leaves. And they're sweeping all the time. It's endless, but they gather them all around and put them in a truck, and a whole truck full of leaves every day, a couple trucks full. It was nice actually. I didn't speak Thai and the Thai didn't speak English, but I just grabbed a broom as well. And a rake actually, and just raking and brooming all the leaves together, and we just worked together. So I suppose that's what the man also did. He wasn't just by himself probably brushing, he probably saw others doing that. And then he also grabbed a broom. So brushing. But probably still thinking, and I'm here just brushing the leaves, and I wanted to talk to Ajahn Chah. Oh well, here we go, just brushing. Suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder. I looked around. It was Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah had a translator with him. And Ajahn Chah said in Thai something that I can't say because I don't speak Thai. But the translator translated. It was just a single sentence. The translator said, whatever you do in life, put all you've got into it. And then Ajahn Chah walked off. And the man used this advice and became very successful. He thought about it very often. And whatever he did in life, he gave it everything he got. When he was in a relationship, he gave his partner everything he got. When he was working, he gave it everything he's got. When he was sleeping, he gave it everything he got. He's resting. When he was meditating, he gave it everything he got. Not thinking the past, the future, just being here right now. And when he was saying sadhu, he gave it everything he got. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right. The night is still young. You can still get enlightened tonight. Not by sitting on top of the stupa, and sitting on top of your cushion. Or walking. But you can also give your sleeping everything you got if you feel like I see some people